Okay, we are going to talk about domain and range today. The domain is the set of all possible values of the independent variable, or the input of your function. The range is the set of all possible values of the dependent variable, or the output of your function. Let's look at the equation y equals 12x. For what possible values could I put in for x? Well, I could put in 1, 12 times 1 is 12. I could put in 2, 2 times 12 is 24. I could put in negative 3, 12 times negative 3 is negative 36. But I could also put in 2.5 or negative 3.8. Those would all yield me an output. So we could see, given this equation, we could put in any real x and get an output. And therefore, I would say that the domain would be all real numbers. Let's take a look at a graph of this equation. If I could put in any real numbers and it would give me an output, I would say that my domain is all real numbers. I could put in any x and it would yield me an outcome. Then the outcome would be also any real number. It would go from negative infinity to positive infinity. So given this somewhat generic equation, I would say that my domain and range is all real numbers. Now let's look at a context situation. Let's say I work as a tutor and I make $12 an hour. What's the practical domain and range? Well, I could set up an equation. It looked kind of like my equation before, but now I have some function notation attached to it, and I say that my pay is dependent upon the hours worked, 12 times h. So if I look at, again, a graph of this was my other graph, well, I'm not going to work negative hours, so I can cancel out my negative numbers. And I surely hope that my employer doesn't pay me negative dollars. I think that means I would be paying him. That doesn't work. So we would cancel out our negative on our y-axis. So then I think, well, what is a practical domain? How many hours am I going to work a week? Well, there's only 168 hours in a week total, and I want some hours to sleep and do some other things, eat, watch TV, have a little leisure time. So I might say that the practical domain would be 0 to 60, meaning I'm going to work somewhere between 0 and 60 hours a week. If my practical domain was 0 to 60, then my practical range would be from 0 to 720. So then I might want to clean this up a little bit and make a new graph and say, here my domain represents a practical domain that goes along with the context of this situation, and my range represents my practical range, which again goes along with the context of this situation. So hopefully that gives you a good idea about domain and range and practical domain and practical range. We talk about practical domain and practical range when we look at a problem in context.